Standing before the towering stones of ancient monuments like Stonehenge or the massive blocks of Baalbek, it's impossible not to feel a sense of awe. How could humans, without modern machinery, have lifted and arranged these colossal structures? The sheer weight of some stones defies imagination, with single slabs weighing as much as 1,000 tons. That's heavier than 3 fully loaded Boeing 747 jets. And yet, these megaliths exist, scattered across the globe, whispering secrets of a forgotten past. But here's the question that has haunted historians, archaeologists, and conspiracy theorists alike for centuries: did ancient giants really build these impossible structures? Or is there another explanation hidden in the shadows of time? The idea isn't as far-fetched as it might sound. Legends from cultures worldwide speak of towering beings, giants who walked the earth, shaping the landscape with superhuman strength. The Bible mentions the Nephilim, the Greeks wrote of the Cyclopes, and Native American traditions tell of giant builders. Even some ancient texts describe kings and heroes of unimaginable stature. Could these stories be more than myth? Could they be fragmented memories of a lost race responsible for the megalithic wonders that still baffle us today? The truth is, mainstream archaeology dismisses the giant theory, attributing these feats to human ingenuity and primitive tools. But then again, how do we explain the precision cuts, the seamless joints, and the transportation of stones across impossible distances? This is where the mystery deepens. If giants didn't build these monuments, who or what did? Were ancient civilizations far more advanced than we've been led to believe? Did they possess lost technologies or knowledge that allowed them to manipulate stone like clay? Or is there something even stranger at play? In this journey, we'll explore the evidence, the myths, and the unanswered questions surrounding these ancient marvels. From the jungles of South America to the deserts of Egypt, the clues are etched in stone, waiting to be deciphered. So, if you've ever wondered about the true origins of these megalithic wonders, stick around, because what you're about to discover might just change the way you see history itself. Megaliths, massive stone structures built with such precision and scale that they defy logic, dot our planet like ancient puzzles waiting to be solved. The term itself comes from Greek, meaning great stone, and that's exactly what these monuments are. Take Stonehenge, for example, with its towering sarsen slabs hauled from over 19 miles away, some weighing up to 50 tons. Or consider the Great Pyramid of Giza, composed of 2.3 million blocks, each weighing 2.5 tons on average, fitted together with gaps thinner than a credit card. Then there's Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site dating back 12,000 years, predating even agriculture, where intricately carved pillars stand in perfect circles, each weighing up to 20 tons. These aren't just random piles of rock, they're feats of engineering that challenge our understanding of history. What makes these structures even more baffling is their precision. The blocks at Puma Punku in Bolivia, for instance, are cut with such sharp angles and smooth surfaces that they resemble modern machine work. The granite sarcophagi in Egypt's Serapeum fit so tightly that not even a razor blade can slide between them. How did ancient people, armed with nothing but copper tools and brute strength, achieve such perfection? Even more puzzling, how did they transport these stones across vast distances without wheels or advanced machinery? The basalt columns at Baalbek in Lebanon, some weighing over 1,000 tons, would be a challenge for modern cranes. Yet there they sit, lifted and placed with inexplicable accuracy. And then there's the question of purpose. Were these megaliths merely tombs, temples, or astronomical calendars, or did they serve a function we've yet to comprehend? The alignment of Stonehenge with solstices suggests deep astronomical knowledge. The pyramid's precise orientation to true north hints at an understanding of the Earth's geometry far beyond what we've credited to ancient civilizations. And Göbekli Tepe, why build such an elaborate complex before humans even settled into farming societies? the more we examine these sites, the more the mysteries multiply. Were the builders guided by lost knowledge, divine intervention, or something beyond our current grasp? The stones remain silent, but their presence shouts questions that demand answers. From the frosty shores of Scandinavia to the sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia, stories of giants echo through time like fragments of a forgotten epoch. The Bible's book of Genesis speaks of the Nephilim, mysterious beings described as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men, often interpreted as towering figures of immense strength who walked the earth before the Great Flood. Ancient Jewish texts like the Book of Enoch elaborate further, painting them as formidable builders and warriors whose exploits blurred the line between myth and memory. Across the Mediterranean, Greek mythology tells of the Cyclopes, one-eyed giants credited with constructing the massive, Cyclopean walls of Mycenae and Turin's, structures so colossal that later civilizations couldn't fathom humans building them and instead attributed the work to mythical beings. Even Homer's Odyssey describes the Cyclopes Polyphemus hurling boulders with ease, a hint that these stories might preserve whispers of a reality lost to time. Journey to the Americas and the traditions deepen. The Paiute people of Nevada recount battles with the red-haired Tka, a race of cannibalistic giants said to have constructed mysterious stone formations. In Peru, legends speak of the Huron, enormous beings who raised the megalithic walls of Sacsayhuaman, where stones fit together so tightly that not a blade of grass can wedge between them. Meanwhile, the Aztecs revered the Quinametsin, giant laborers believed to have built the ancient city of Teotihuacan under the watch of the gods. What's striking isn't just the universality of these tales, it's their eerie consistency. Giants aren't just random monsters, they're portrayed as architects, craftsmen, and engineers. From the Polynesian stories of the Menehune, small-statured but supernaturally strong builders who worked at night, to Hindu epics describing the demonic deities constructing celestial palaces, the motif repeats, beings of immense power shaping the world with stone. Even in Ireland, the mythological Firbolg were said to have erected the megalithic tombs of the Boyne Valley, their name translating to men of bags, possibly referencing their strength in carrying earth and stone. Could these legends be distorted accounts of an actual ancient race? Skeptics argue they're symbolic metaphors for natural forces or cultural upheavals. But when you line up the global dots, the patterns are hard to ignore. Why would disparate cultures, separated by oceans and millennia, all describe giants as builders of impossible structures? Whether metaphor or memory, these stories force us to confront a haunting possibility, that history's foundations might rest on truths we're only beginning to uncover. The ancient historian Flavius Josephus left us some of the most intriguing accounts of giants in his first-century work, Antiquities of the Jews. He describes the remnants of a towering race still visible in his time, writing, "There were till then left the race of giants, who had bodies so large and countenances so entirely different from other men that they were surprising to the sight and terrible to the hearing." Even more startling, he claims their bones were still on display, a detail that blurs the line between myth and historical record. Was Josephus simply repeating folklore, or did he have access to physical evidence now lost to time? The answer may lie in context. Josephus wrote during the Roman Empire, a time when the bones of prehistoric animals like mammoths were occasionally unearthed and misinterpreted. Could these fossils have fueled belief in giants? Medieval Europe's chronicles add layers to the mystery. In the 12th century, the German Bishop Otto of Freising recorded an alleged giant skeleton discovered near Vienna, measuring 18 feet in height. Similar reports pop up across the continent. Spanish explorers in the New World wrote of encountering skeletal remains so large that a human skull could fit inside their eye sockets. Even the famous Venetian traveler Marco Polo claimed to have seen giant rocks in Madagascar, though his descriptions eerily match the elephant bird, an extinct flightless creature. These accounts raise a crucial question. Were medieval writers embellishing, misinterpreting fossils, or documenting something genuinely unexplained? Beyond Europe, the Middle East offers its own clues. The Babylonian Talmud mentions the ancient Amorites as giants, while Islamic texts describe the Ad people, a civilization so tall they could uproot trees with one hand. Even the Roman Emperor Maximinus Thrax, who stood over 8 feet tall by some accounts, was viewed as a relic of this legendary race. The consistency is striking, but is it coincidence or cultural memory? Modern archaeology often dismisses these reports as exaggerations or misidentified dinosaur bones. Yet, scattered finds keep the debate alive. In the 19th century, newspapers from New York to Wisconsin reported giant skeletons unearthed from Native American burial mounds, some allegedly 7 to 9 feet long. While many were hoaxes or lost to time, a few were documented by reputable institutions only to vanish from museum collections. The Smithsonian, for instance, once listed numerous giant specimens in its records, fueling conspiracy theories about a cover-up. The truth may never be fully settled. Some argue these stories served symbolic purposes, warning against hubris or explaining the inexplicable, like earthquakes or ruined cities. Others see them as distorted oral histories of real, if not gigantic, warrior cultures. But when you stack ancient texts against medieval chronicles and odd archaeological finds, one thing becomes clear: the idea of giants wasn't just fantasy. It was a persistent, global phenomenon woven into humanity's attempt to make sense of its past. Whether myth or memory, these tales challenge us to look deeper, because sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones we haven't fully unraveled yet. The 19th century was a golden age for giant hunters and for hoaxers. Newspapers buzzed with reports of towering skeletons unearthed from Native American burial mounds, sparking public frenzy and scholarly debate. One of the most infamous cases was the Cardiff Giant, a 10-foot-tall, petrified man dug up in New York in 1869. Crowds flocked to see the colossal figure, convinced it was proof of biblical giants, until it was revealed to be a gypsum statue, carefully aged with acid and hammer marks, concocted by a cigar salesman named George Hull. Hull's motive: to mock religious fundamentalists who took Genesis literally. The stunt worked too well, illustrating how easily myth could be manufactured and consumed. But the Cardiff Giant was just the tip of the iceberg. Across America, similar discoveries made headlines. In Minnesota, the so-called Lansing Man was touted as a 12-foot-tall skeleton until anthropologists identified it as a mastodon bone. In Wisconsin, a farmer claimed to find a giant race's burial ground, later exposed as a mishmash of animal bones and plaster. Even the Smithsonian faced scrutiny after reports surfaced of giant skeletons in their collection, some allegedly disappearing under mysterious circumstances. While most were misidentified fossils or outright fakes, the rumors took on a life of their own, fueled by tabloids and a public hungry for the extraordinary. Why did these hoaxes resonate so deeply? Part of it was timing. The late 19th century saw explosive interest in archaeology, coupled with spiritualism and a growing distrust of institutional science. Giants bridged the gap between scripture and sensationalism, offering proof of a more mythic past. But there's another layer: cultural erasure. Many giant claims targeted Native American sites, reinforcing racist stereotypes that indigenous peoples couldn't have built sophisticated earthwork, so someone else, someone other, must have. The myth of giants became a tool to justify dispossession, rewriting history to fit colonial narratives. The pattern persists today. In 2007, a viral email claimed the Smithsonian had suppressed evidence of a 9-foot skeleton in the Middle East, a story debunked but still shared endlessly. From YouTube clickbait to conspiracy forums, the giant narrative endures because it taps into something primal, a suspicion that history's textbooks are incomplete. We want to believe there's more to the story, that hidden truths lurk beneath our feet. And sometimes the most enduring myths aren't about bones at all, but about who gets to tell the tale. Ancient religious texts don't just hint at giants, they paint them as central figures in humanity's earliest chapters. Take the Book of Enoch, an apocryphal Hebrew text that describes the Nephilim not merely as towering beings, but as cosmic disruptors who taught humanity forbidden arts like metallurgy and astronomy. According to Enoch, these fallen entities corrupted the earth with their hybrid offspring, leading to the cataclysm of the Great Flood. But here's the twist: some interpretations suggest these giants weren't just destroyers. They were builders too, responsible for structures so advanced that later generations assumed only divine or superhuman hands could have created them. Enoch's description of their works of stone eerily mirrors the precision of megalithic sites like Baalbek or Ollantaytambo, where multi-ton blocks seem fused together without mortar. Turn to Hindu scriptures and the parallels grow even more striking. The Mahabharata and Puranas speak of the Daityas and Danavas, giant asuras who constructed vast underground cities and flying machines called Vimanas. The epic Ramayana describes the demon king Ravana's fortress, built with stones so massive that modern engineers still debate how they were moved. Even more fascinating is the legend of the Vedic sage Vishwakarma, the divine architect said to have designed entire cities with celestial precision, echoing the mathematical alignments found in sites like Teotihuacan or the pyramids of Giza. These stories blur the line between myth and technical manual, as if encoding forgotten knowledge of construction techniques lost to time. The Quran, too, preserves traces of this narrative. Surah Al-Araf mentions the Ad people, a civilization of giants who built lofty palaces in the plains and carved homes into mountains, a description that could easily apply to Petra's rock-cut facades or the cliff dwellings of Cappadocia. Islamic historians like al-Tabari expanded on this, claiming the Ad possessed strength so immense they could uproot trees with one hand, a detail that mirrors Polynesian tales of the Menehune moving boulders overnight. What binds these accounts together isn't just the theme of giants, but their dual role as both architects and agents of chaos. In the Bible, Goliath's defeat symbolizes the triumph of the divinely chosen underdog over brute strength. Yet earlier passages credit giants like Og of Bashan with constructing massive stone beds and fortifications. Similarly, Greek myths depict the Titans as both builders of Olympus and forces of primordial destruction. This duality raises a provocative question. Could these stories be allegories for real, catastrophic events? Perhaps the collapse of an advanced megalithic culture whose ruins later inspired tales of gods and monsters. The connection between scripture and stone becomes even more compelling when you examine specific sites. In Lebanon, the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek features a trilithon, 3 blocks each weighing 800 tons placed 60 feet high. Local legends say the platform was built by the jinn, supernatural beings of smokeless fire mentioned in the Quran. Meanwhile, in Peru, the Inca spoke of the Viracochas, white-skinned giants who raised Sacsayhuaman's zigzagging walls before vanishing into the sea. It's as if every culture, from the Andes to Anatolia, preserved fragments of the same blueprint, a lost epoch when beings of immense power shaped the world with stone, and whose legacy remains encoded in both holy texts and half-buried ruins. What's remarkable isn't just the consistency of these accounts across continents, it's their specificity. The Book of Ezekiel describes the Watchers as teachers of forbidden knowledge, while Mesopotamian tablets depict the Apkallu, half-fish sages who instructed humanity in architecture after the flood. Even the Dogon people of Mali, who knew of Sirius B's existence centuries before telescopes, claimed their astronomical lore came from amphibious giants. These threads suggest something deeper than coincidence, a global tapestry of memory woven from the same eerie cloth. Whether metaphors for natural disasters, distorted records of advanced cultures, or literal descriptions of a forgotten race, these texts challenge us to rethink history's edges. After all, when myth and megalith align so precisely across time and space, it's worth asking what truths might be hiding in plain sight, etched not just in parchment, but in the very stones beneath our feet. While mainstream archaeology credits ancient human ingenuity for megalithic marvels, another theory whispers from the fringes. What if these structures were crafted by a forgotten civilization far more advanced than our textbooks admit? The idea isn't new. Plato first wrote of Atlantis, a mighty island kingdom that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of misfortune. His dialogues describe a people of unparalleled engineering prowess, constructing concentric canals and palaces lined with orichalcum, a mysterious metal. Could Atlanteans have been the master builders behind global megaliths? Proponents like 19th century Congressman Ignatius Donnelly argued exactly that. In his book Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, he compiled geological and cultural parallels, from pyramid-like structures on both sides of the Atlantic to flood myths shared across continents as evidence of a lost civilization seeding knowledge worldwide before its cataclysmic demise. But Atlantis isn't the only candidate. Ancient Greek texts speak of Hyperborea, a mythical land beyond the north wind inhabited by giants bathed in eternal sunlight. The historian Diodorus Siculus claimed its people lived for 1,000 years, building towering temples to Apollo. Some theorists, like 20th century mystic René Guénon, proposed Hyperborea as the original homeland of a global megalithic culture, its survivors scattering after an ice age collapse. Then there's Lemuria, a hypothetical Pacific continent championed by biologist Ernst Haeckel to explain lemur fossils in India and Africa, later adopted by occultists who reimagined it as a paradise of telepathic giants. These theories share a tantalizing thread, the idea that prehistory's greatest monuments are remnants of a mother culture wiped clean by disaster. Archaeologists dismiss them as pseudo-history, pointing to the lack of concrete evidence. Yet anomalies persist. The submerged Yonaguni monument off Japan's coast, a stepped, angular formation some argue is man-made, hints at possible sunken cities. The Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old Greek device with gears matching 19th century clocks, suggests pockets of advanced technology. Even mainstream scholars admit ancient humans achieved feats we struggle to explain, like the precision-cut andesite blocks at Peru's Ollantaytambo, moved across miles of rugged terrain without wheels. The debate often hinges on interpretation. Are these sites proof of lost civilizations or simply testaments to human adaptability? Skeptics argue that attributing megaliths to Atlantis or giants removes agency from indigenous cultures, a colonial trope in disguise. But proponents counter that dismissing all anomalies risks closing doors on history's mysteries. After all, Troy and the Hittites were once deemed myths until archaeologists dug them up. Whether fact or fantasy, these theories force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our past might be far stranger and more fragmented than we've dared to imagine. The stones remain silent and stubborn, refusing to fit neatly into any single narrative, and perhaps that's the most compelling mystery of all. Consider the walls of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where massive limestone blocks, some weighing over 100 tons, fit together like a three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The stones curve and interlock with such precision that you can't slide a sheet of paper between them, yet they were shaped without iron tools or mortar. The Inca called this technique minca, where stones were patiently hammered with harder rocks until their edges matched perfectly. But here's what baffles engineers. How did they transport these monoliths from quarries miles away, across jagged mountain terrain, without the wheel or pack animals? Modern experiments show it would take hundreds of people dragging a single block on logs, yet the logistics of coordinating such efforts without written records seem almost as impossible as the stones themselves. Then there's Stonehenge, where the central sarsen bluestones were hauled from Wales over 150 miles as the crow flies through rivers and valleys. Archaeologists suggest they might have used sledges and rollers, but even with Neolithic ingenuity, moving 50-ton stones uphill defies practicality. Even stranger is the site's alignment. During solstices, sunlight pierces the heel stone to illuminate the altar like a celestial spotlight. This isn't guesswork, it's advanced astronomy encoded in rock. The builders knew the solar cycle with a precision that rivals modern calculations, yet left no blueprints or star charts behind. Shift to Egypt, where the Great Pyramid's base is leveled to within 2 centimeters across 13 acres, a feat modern lasers struggle to replicate. The corners align almost perfectly with true north, suggesting the builders understood Earth's geometry millennia before GPS. Meanwhile, at Puma Punku in Bolivia, andesite blocks are cut with geometric perfection, right angles, drill holes, and grooves that look machined. The local Tiwanaku culture had no known metal tools harder than copper, yet these stones required diamond-tipped saws to replicate today, the common thread. These cultures achieved near-impossible precision with what we'd consider primitive technology. Mainstream archaeology credits trial and error over generations, but that raises another question. Why don't we find more practice sites with crude attempts? The megaliths appear fully formed, as if their builders skipped straight to mastery. Some theorists propose lost techniques, like the ancient Egyptians using water levels to flatten pyramid bases or sound waves to soften stone, as hinted at in obscure texts. Others wonder if these sites were built by earlier, more advanced civilizations later claimed by newcomers, the most unsettling possibility that we've underestimated ancient humans. The Dogon tribe of Mali knew of Sirius B's existence centuries before telescopes. The Maya calculated Venus' orbit to within seconds. Perhaps megaliths aren't just tombs or temples, they're proof of a scientific tradition oral cultures preserved in ritual and stone. Without written records, we're left with ruins that whisper, the past might hold more genius than we've dared to credit. One of the most baffling aspects of megalithic construction isn't just the scale, it's the eerie lack of tools left behind. If ancient humans built these wonders, where are the chisels capable of slicing granite like butter? Where are the ramps, pulleys, or cranes needed to hoist 1,000-ton stones? Take Baalbek's trilithon, 3 blocks each weighing 800 tons, perched 60 feet high in Lebanon. Modern engineers struggle to replicate this feat even with hydraulic cranes, yet archaeologists have found no definitive evidence of the technology used to position them. The Romans, who later built a temple atop the platform, credited its construction to the mythical Cyclopes because even they couldn't fathom how humans managed it. The mystery deepens when examining the quarries. At Aswan, Egypt, the unfinished obelisk, a 1,000-ton giant still attached to bedrock, reveals marks from dolomite pounders, tools barely harder than the granite they were shaping. The math doesn't add up. Estimates suggest it would take a worker 50 years of non-stop pounding to free the obelisk, let alone carve it. Meanwhile, at Ollantaytambo in Peru, andesite blocks show drill holes so precise they imply the use of tubular drills, a technology not known to the Inca. Even stranger, some stones bear vitrified surfaces, as if exposed to extreme heat, a phenomenon no existing ancient tool can explain. Transportation poses its own riddles. How were stones like the 200-ton thunderstone used for the bronze horseman statue in St. Petersburg moved without modern machinery? 18th century Russians managed it with wooden sleds and hundreds of workers, but that's a far cry from Baalbek's megaliths, which would require 20 times the manpower. And then there's the logistics. The basalt columns at Göbekli Tepe were hauled from quarries over 4 miles away across rocky terrain. Experiments showed dragging a single column would need 50 people working in unison, a level of coordination that seems improbable for a pre-agricultural society. Perhaps the most unsettling gap is in the assembly. At Sacsayhuaman, zigzagging walls fit together like a lock and key with stones weighing up to 300 tons. The Inca claimed their ancestors softened stone with a mythical plant juice, but no such substance has ever been identified. Similarly, Coral Castle in Florida, built single-handedly by Edward Leedskalnin in the 20th century, features multi-ton blocks moved with no visible tools. Leedskalnin cryptically claimed to know the secrets of the pyramids, leaving behind only makeshift pulleys far too flimsy for the task. These absences aren't just gaps, they're glaring contradictions. Either ancient cultures possessed tools and techniques far beyond what we've uncovered, or they accessed knowledge that's since vanished from history's record. The stones stand as silent witnesses, challenging us to question not just how they were built, but whether we've underestimated the ingenuity or the secrets of those who came before us. Modern engineering has given us cranes capable of lifting 1,000 tons, laser-guided cutting tools that slice through granite like paper, and hydraulic systems that move entire buildings. Yet, when we compare these advancements to megalithic construction, the differences aren't as stark as you might think. In fact, some of these ancient feats would still challenge our best technology today. Take the trilithon at Baalbek, 3 blocks, each the weight of 2 fully loaded Airbus A380 jets, placed 60 feet in the air. Even with our most powerful cranes, positioning stones of that size with such precision would require weeks of planning and a small army of engineers. So how did people without industrial-grade machinery manage it? The logistics alone are staggering. Transporting a single megalith like the 200-ton stones at Sacsayhuaman would demand a fleet of trucks, reinforced roads, and custom rigging. Yet, ancient builders moved these monoliths across rivers, up mountains, and through dense jungles with nothing but ropes, logs, and manpower. Modern experiments have tried replicating these methods, like the time a team in Japan attempted to move a 2-ton stone using only wooden sledges and water to reduce friction. It worked, but scaling that up to a 100-ton block introduces problems we still can't fully solve. Friction, terrain, and the sheer physics of balance make these tasks borderline impossible without mechanical advantage. Then there's the precision. Today, we use computer modeling and diamond-tipped saws to create seamless joints in stone. But at Puma Punku, andesite blocks were cut with near-flawless 90-degree angles and perfectly straight grooves, something our tools could only achieve with industrial machinery. The granite boxes in the Serapeum of Saqqara, Egypt, fit so tightly that not even a human hair can slide between them. Modern stonemasons admit that replicating this level of precision by hand would be painstakingly slow, if not outright unfeasible. And let's not forget the math. The Great Pyramid's alignment with true north is accurate to within a fraction of a degree, a feat that would require modern surveyors and GPS to replicate. The Maya calculated celestial cycles with precision that rivals our atomic clocks, and the builders of Stonehenge positioned its stones to track lunar standstills 18.6 years apart. These aren't just educated guesses, they're evidence of a sophisticated understanding of astronomy and geometry that, in some cases, surpasses what the average engineer knows today. So, what's the missing piece? Some theorists suggest forgotten techniques, like acoustic levitation, described in Tibetan texts as a way to make stones lighter than feathers. Others point to ancient chemical treatments like the plant-based softening agents the Inca claimed could dissolve rock. While mainstream science dismisses these ideas as myth, the absence of any conventional tool marks at certain sites keeps the debate alive. The real shock isn't just that ancient people accomplished these feats, it's that we still don't have a definitive explanation for how. Our best machines can match their results, but only with the benefit of centuries of accumulated knowledge. That leaves us with a humbling thought. If they could do all this with copper chisels and ropes, what else might they have known that we've yet to rediscover? Buried beneath the dusty hills of southeastern Turkey, Göbekli Tepe shatters everything we thought we knew about early human civilization. Dating back 12,000 years, 7 millennia before the Great Pyramid, This sprawling complex of massive, T-shaped limestone pillars arranged in perfect circles predates agriculture, metal tools, and even permanent settlements. The pillars, some weighing over 20 tons and standing 16 feet tall, are intricately carved with bas-reliefs of foxes, scorpions, and vultures, their artistry rivaling anything from later millennia. But here's what defies logic. According to mainstream archaeology, the people who built this were hunter-gatherers, nomads who hadn't yet domesticated plants or animals. How could they have quarried, transported, and erected these megaliths without even basic farming to sustain such a labor-intensive project? The math simply doesn't add up unless we're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. Local folklore might hold a clue. Kurdish villagers near Göbekli Tepe whisper of Sinla, supernatural beings said to have built the site in a single night. These legends echo older Mesopotamian myths of the Anunnaki, godlike figures who descended from the heavens to teach humanity the arts of civilization. Even more intriguing, some of the pillars depict humanoid figures with elongated heads and stylized belts, their arms folded in a pose that scholars compare to later depictions of deities. Could these carvings represent the builders themselves, a race of giants or advanced beings later mythologized? The site's lead archaeologist, Klaus Schmidt, cautiously suggested Göbekli Tepe was a cathedral on the hill, a ceremonial complex constructed by a society we've yet to fully understand. But others go further. Author Graham Hancock proposes it was part of a lost global civilization, survivors of an ice age cataclysm who passed down advanced knowledge before fading into legend. The engineering alone raises eyebrows. The pillars were quarried from bedrock over 300 yards away, shaped with flint tools, and somehow hauled uphill without wheels or beasts of burden. Even more baffling is the intentional burial of the entire site around 8000 BC, carefully packed with tons of soil as if preserving it for future generations. Who orders such a project and why? Mainstream theories suggest it was ritualistic, but alternative researchers like Andrew Collins point to the alignment of the pillars with the constellation Cygnus, hinting at astronomical knowledge that shouldn't exist in the Stone Age. Then there's the bigger question. If hunter-gatherers built Göbekli Tepe, why don't we find similar structures from that era? It stands alone, a sudden explosion of sophistication with no clear evolutionary precedent. Some argue it's proof of a reset in human history, a cataclysm that wiped out an earlier advanced culture, leaving only fragments like this behind. Others propose that the builders weren't human at all, but visitors from another time or place, their legacy encoded in the stones. Whatever the truth, Göbekli Tepe forces us to confront an unsettling possibility, that the timeline of human achievement might be far older and far stranger than we've ever dared to admit. The pillars remain silent and enigmatic, as if waiting for us to decipher their message. And until we do, they'll continue to challenge the very foundations of history as we know it. On the remote shores of Easter Island, the moai stand as silent sentinels of a mystery carved in stone. These towering figures, some weighing up to 80 tons and standing 33 feet tall, gaze inland with hollow eyes, their origins as enigmatic as the island itself. Over 900 of these statues dot the landscape, with the largest known as El Gigante lying unfinished in the Rono-Roroku quarry, a staggering 270 tons of volcanic tuff never raised to its feet. The question isn't just how these monoliths were carved, but how they were transported across miles of rugged terrain to their final positions, often perched atop ceremonial platforms called ahu. The island's oral traditions offer a tantalizing clue. Legends speak of the Hanau Ep, a race of long ears or giants who moved the statues with the help of divine power or lost technology. The logistics of moving the moai seem almost supernatural. Experiments by archaeologists have tried replicating the feat using wooden sledges, ropes, and teams of workers, methods that theoretically could work but strain credibility at scale. In 1986, a team managed to walk a 15-ton replica upright by rocking it with ropes, mimicking the islanders' oral accounts of the statues moving themselves. But scaling this to 80 tons, let alone El Gigant's unfinished mass, introduces problems even modern engineers can't easily solve. The island's sparse resources devoid of large trees for rollers or heavy machinery only deepen the puzzle. Local legends add layers to the mystery. The Hanau Ep are described as physically distinct from the island's Polynesian settlers, with elongated ears and towering stature. Some accounts claim they wielded mana, a spiritual force that allowed them to command the stones. These stories eerily parallel other global giant myths, from the Nephilim to the Cyclopes, suggesting a recurring theme, that megalithic achievements might be tied to beings beyond ordinary human capability. Even the island's name in Rapa Nui, Te Pito o Te Henua, translates to the navel of the world, hinting at a lost connection to a broader, forgotten civilization. But the most startling clue might lie in the statues themselves. Recent excavations revealed that many moai were not just heads but full body figures buried up to their shoulders, their torsos carved with intricate petroglyphs. This discovery upends earlier assumptions about their construction, implying a level of detail and effort far beyond what was previously imagined. The buried bodies also suggest a cataclysmic event, perhaps a tsunami or earthquake, that toppled and buried them, severing the island's cultural memory of how they were built. Theories about the moai's purpose range from ancestral worship to astronomical markers, yet none fully explain why such a small, isolated population would undertake such a colossal endeavor. Some researchers propose the statues were part of a desperate ecological intervention, erected to stabilize a society collapsing from deforestation and famine. Others, like linguist Stephen Fisher, argue the moai were walking manifestations of sacred chiefs, their transport a ritual reenactment of mythical journeys. Easter Island's enigma forces us to confront the limits of archaeology. Without written records, we're left with stones and stories, the moai's impassive faces hiding secrets we may never fully unravel. Whether the work of giants, gods, or an extraordinarily determined people, these statues stand as a testament to humanity's relentless drive to reach beyond its grasp, leaving behind monuments that whisper across the centuries. And perhaps that's their true purpose, not just to mark graves or gods, but to remind us that history's greatest wonders often lie just beyond the edge of understanding. The ruins of Baalbek in Lebanon hold a secret that defies engineering logic: 3 colossal limestone blocks known as the Trilithon, each weighing an almost incomprehensible 800 tons, stacked 60 feet high in the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter. To put that into perspective, each stone is heavier than 2 fully loaded Airbus A380 aircraft. The precision is staggering. The blocks fit together so seamlessly that not even a razor blade can slide between them. But here's what truly baffles experts. The quarry where these stones were cut lies nearly a mile away across uneven terrain. Even with today's cranes and hydraulic lifts, moving just one of these megaliths would require meticulous planning and a small army of engineers. So how did an ancient civilization pull this off over 2,000 years ago? Local folklore offers a haunting answer. For generations, Lebanese tradition has whispered that the platform wasn't built by human hands at all, but by the jinn, supernatural beings forged from smokeless fire, mentioned in the Quran as entities capable of extraordinary feats. Some legends even claim the stones were levitated into place through forgotten incantations. The Romans, who later claimed Baalbek as a site for their own temple, were so awed by the Trilithon that they attributed it to the Cyclopes, the mythical one-eyed giants of Greek lore. It's as if every culture that encountered these stones sensed something beyond human capability, a truth too unsettling to admit. Archaeologists have proposed more earthly explanations, suggesting the blocks were dragged on wooden rollers by thousands of laborers. But experiments reveal a glaring flaw in this theory. The largest of Baalbek stones, the so-called Stone of the Pregnant Woman, still lies abandoned in the quarry, estimated to weigh over 1,000 tons. Modern attempts to move even a fraction of its mass using primitive methods have ended in failure. Compounding the mystery, the quarry sits uphill from the temple site. Moving these stones wouldn't just require brute force, it would demand a mastery of physics and logistics that rivals modern engineering. What's often overlooked is the precision of the cuts. The trilithon stones aren't rough-hewn. Their edges are beveled at perfect angles, suggesting the builders worked with tools far beyond the bronze chisels of their era. Some researchers point to a nearby, even larger monolith, the Stone of the South, which dwarfs the trilithon at an estimated 1,650 tons. If moved, it would be the heaviest object ever transported by human hands, yet it remains half-carved in the quarry, as if the builders abandoned their project mid-effort, leaving behind a tantalizing question: what technology or force allowed them to attempt such a feat in the first place? The mystery deepens when you examine Baalbek's timeline. The site's original builders predate the Romans by millennia, with some scholars tracing its foundations back to the Phoenicians or even earlier. Could an advanced civilization, now lost to history, have engineered these megaliths? Or do the legends of giants and jinn preserve a kernel of truth, a memory of beings who walked the earth with knowledge we've yet to rediscover? The stones of Baalbek refuse to yield their secrets, standing as both a monument and a riddle. And perhaps that's their purpose, to remind us that history's greatest achievements might not belong to us alone. Tucked away in a riverbed near the South African town of Mpuluzi lies a curious depression in the rock, a footprint so massive it stretches nearly 4 feet in length. Locals call it Goliath's footprint, its 5 distinct toes etched into granite as if an enormous being once strode across molten stone. But here's the catch. Geologists estimate the rock formed over 200 million years ago, long before humans walked the earth. So what or who could have left this mark? The answer depends on who you ask. To some, it's undeniable proof of ancient giants, a physical echo of legends like the biblical Goliath or the Titans of Greek myth. To others, it's a fascinating quirk of natural erosion, a case of pareidolia, our brain's tendency to see familiar shapes where none exist. Similar claims span the globe. In the village of Ain Dara, Syria, a set of massive footprints carved into a temple floor measures 3 feet long, their purpose and origin still debated by archaeologists. In China's Guizhou province, a cluster of 24 fossilized prints, each over 1.5 feet long, were discovered in sandstone dating back to the Cretaceous period. Even North America has its share, like the 14-inch giant footprint near Glen Rose, Texas, embedded in limestone alongside dinosaur tracks. These sites share eerie similarities. They're often found in hard stone, their edges unnaturally crisp, as if pressed into something malleable before solidifying. Could these be traces of a forgotten race, or is geology playing tricks on us? Mainstream science offers explanations. The South African footprint, for instance, matches the weathering patterns of softer rock eroding faster than surrounding granite, leaving a toe-like shape behind. The Syrian carvings likely served a ritual purpose, symbolizing the presence of deities, a common motif in ancient Near Eastern cultures. As for the Guizhou prints, paleontologists attribute them to dinosaur tracks distorted by time and weather. Yet skeptics point to details that defy easy dismissal. Some prints show arch contours and toe proportions too precise for random erosion. Others, like the Baalbek megaliths, appear in regions steeped in giant lore, suggesting cultural memory might be at play. Perhaps the most compelling case lies in India's Lepakshi temple, where a single footprint sinks into the floor, measuring over 6 feet long. Local tradition claims it belongs to the giant demon king Ravana from the Ramayana, who stomped here during a battle with the god Hanuman. Scientific analysis reveals the rock is indeed ancient, but the print's edges show tool marks, evidence of human carving. This duality is key. Some giant prints are artistic or symbolic, while others resist straightforward explanation. The debate boils down to interpretation. Are these anomalies products of nature, art, or something more enigmatic? When multiple cultures, separated by continents and millennia, all describe giants and leave behind similar stone impressions, it's worth asking whether they witnessed something we've since forgotten. Or perhaps, like clouds forming faces, we're projecting our myths onto the earth itself. Either way, these footprints, real or imagined, invite us to tread carefully between geology and legend, where every step uncovers deeper questions than answers. The massive, jagged walls of Mycenae in Greece rise like the remnants of a forgotten age. Their stones so colossal and irregular that later civilizations couldn't fathom humans building them, so they called them Cyclopean, believing only the one-eyed giants of myth could have lifted such blocks. These walls, some weighing 50 tons or more, fit together with uncanny precision despite their uneven shapes, locking into place without mortar like a monstrous jigsaw puzzle. But Mycenae isn't alone. Across the world, from the Andes to the Mediterranean, similar megalithic sites defy conventional understanding, raising the question: was the term Cyclopean just poetic license, or did it preserve a half-remembered truth about the builders? Take Sacsayhuaman in Peru, where zigzagging walls of limestone and andesite interlock so tightly that even centuries of earthquakes haven't shifted them. Some blocks weigh over 100 tons, their edges beveled and curved to match neighboring stones with laser-like accuracy. The Inca credited their construction to the Viracochas, divine beings who softened stone with a magical plant. In Greece, the same myth appears. Homer's Cyclopes were said to forge thunderbolts for Zeus, suggesting a race of master craftsmen. Could these stories be more than coincidence? The parallels are striking, cultures separated by oceans and millennia, yet both describing giant, supernatural builders for their most inexplicable structures. Archaeologists argue that the term Cyclopean was metaphorical, a way for later Greeks to explain the achievements of their Bronze Age predecessors. They point to evidence of advanced Bronze Age engineering, like the use of levers, ramps, and obsessive trial and error fitting. But this explanation stumbles when faced with the raw physics of the task. At Turin's, another Cyclopean site, stones are stacked so precisely that even a thin knife blade can't slip between them, a level of craftsmanship that would require not just skill, but near superhuman patience and strength. Modern experiments show that replicating these techniques with primitive tools would take lifetimes, yet these walls were built in mere generations. Then there's the matter of scale. In Japan's Okinawa Castle, similar megalithic walls feature stones weighing up to 80 tons, fitted with the same irregular perfection. Local legends speak of the Menchun, dwarf-like beings who worked at night, completing impossible constructions before dawn. Even the ancient Egyptians used Cyclopean techniques in places like the Valley Temple of Copper, where granite blocks weighing 200 tons defy explanation. The pattern is unmistakable. Wherever we find these walls, we find myths of non-human builders. So were giants real? Probably not in the literal sense. But the persistence of these legends suggests something profound, that the people who came after these megalithic cultures recognized a gap between their own capabilities and the wonders left behind. The term Cyclopean might not prove the existence of giants, but it does hint at a deeper truth, that the past holds achievements we still struggle to explain, and sometimes the only answer that made sense was to credit the impossible. Whether by gods, giants, or simply lost human ingenuity, these walls stand as a challenge to history, daring us to unravel their secrets. Long before European settlers arrived on North American shores, indigenous cultures spoke of beings far larger and more formidable than ordinary humans, figures woven into their histories as both creators and destroyers. Among the Choctaw people, the Nahalo were feared as pale-skinned giants who once stalked the land, their name translating to "those who slaughter." Legends describe them as cannibalistic rulers of the ancient world, their reign ending only when the Choctaw ancestors drove them into extinction. Similar tales echo across tribes. The Comanche told of towering, red-haired giants called the Satsika, while the Paiute of Nevada recounted battles against the Tka, a race of giants said to have built mysterious stone towers in Lovelock Cave. These stories aren't just isolated folklore, they're threads in a tapestry of memory that stretches from the Great Plains to the Mississippi Valley, where the earth itself bears witness to something extraordinary. Nowhere is this connection between myth and earthwork more striking than at Cahokia, the sprawling pre-Columbian city near modern-day St. Louis. At its heart stands Monk's Mound, a colossal earthen pyramid covering 14 acres and rising 100 feet high, larger at its base than Egypt's Great Pyramid. Built by the Mississippian culture around 1,000 years ago, Cahokia's mounds align with celestial events like the solstices, hinting at advanced astronomical knowledge. But here's what's haunting. Local oral traditions passed down through generations of the Osage and other tribes claim the mounds were constructed by a race of giants who later vanished. Archaeologists attribute the work to thousands of laborers moving basketfuls of dirt, yet the scale is so immense that early European explorers refused to believe native people could have built it, a bias that ironically mirrors the very myths they dismissed. The mystery deepens when examining the artifacts. In the Ohio River Valley, the Adena and Hopewell cultures left behind mounds filled with peculiar finds. Oversized stone tools, skeletal remains measuring 7 to 9 feet long, though many were controversially lost by 19th century collectors, and copper ornaments depicting elongated, otherworldly figures. The Grave Creek Mound in West Virginia once yielded a sandstone tablet inscribed with mysterious symbols, alongside skeletons reportedly towering over 8 feet. Though like so much evidence, these were later misplaced by museums, leaving only vague reports and local legends behind. Perhaps the most provocative clue lies in the mound's alignment. The Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, a quarter-mile-long earthwork shaped like an undulating snake, mirrors constellations in a way that suggests its builders understood celestial cycles with precision. The Cherokee tell of the Octina, a giant serpent spirit whose movements shape the land, while the Shawnee describe ancient battles against a race of serpent-worshipping giants. Coincidence, or could these stories encode a memory of the mound builders themselves, a people whose knowledge and stature became mythologized over centuries? The disconnect between official archaeology and indigenous oral history raises uncomfortable questions. For decades, scholars dismissed native accounts as symbolic or fictional, preferring to see the mounds as purely human achievements. But when tribe after tribe, from the Delaware to the Chickasaw, speaks of giants shaping the land, it's worth asking why these stories persist so consistently. Were the Nahalo and their kin purely mythological boogeymen, or could they represent exaggerated memories of real, imposing figures, perhaps elite warrior kings or foreign invaders whose dominance became legend? The bones may be lost and the truth buried under layers of time and prejudice, but the mounds remain. Silent and enigmatic, they challenge us to listen not just to shovels and textbooks, but to the voices of those who kept these stories alive long before history books were written. What's undeniable is the ingenuity behind these structures. Cahokia's builders moved 55 million cubic feet of earth without wheels or beasts of burden, all while sustaining a city of 20,000 larger than London at the time. If giants didn't build these wonders, then the real story might be even more remarkable, that ordinary humans working together across generations achieved the seemingly impossible. And yet the legends linger, whispering that some truths might lie not in choosing between myth and science, but in the shadowy space where both collide. Whether memory or metaphor, these tales of giants and earthworks remind us that history isn't just written in artifacts, but in the stories we tell to make sense of the inexplicable. And sometimes the most enduring mysteries aren't in the ground at all, but in the echoes of voices long past. The walls of Jericho loom over the Jordan Valley, their ancient stones steeped in biblical legend. According to scripture, these massive fortifications fell to the Israelites after 7 days of marching and trumpet blasts. But what's often overlooked is who built them in the first place. The Book of Numbers gives a chilling clue. The city was inhabited by the Anakim, a race of giants descended from the Nephilim, who made the invading Israelites seem like grasshoppers in comparison. These weren't just tall warriors, they were part of a lineage so formidable that their reputation alone struck fear into entire armies. And Jericho's walls, with their Cyclopean-scale masonry, raise a compelling question. Could these biblical giants have been the architects behind some of the Levant's most imposing megaliths? Archaeological excavations at Jericho reveal a tantalizing puzzle. The city's earliest walls date back to around 8000 BC, constructed from massive undressed stones fitted together in a way that mirrors other so-called giant-built sites like Mycenae or Sacsayhuaman. Even more intriguing, the Bible locates the Anakim not just in Jericho but throughout Canaan, precisely where clusters of megalithic structures appear. In Hebron, traditional burial sites of the patriarchs are housed in a cavern beneath a colossal Herodian-era wall. But local legends claim the foundation stones were laid by the Anakim long before. The ruins of Ammon in modern-day Jordan feature similarly massive blocks, some weighing over 50 tons, attributed by medieval Arab historians to a pre-Israelite race of towering beings. Skeptics argue these connections are coincidental, pointing to the lack of skeletal evidence matching the Bible's descriptions, yet anomalies persist. In the 1920s, excavations near the Dead Sea uncovered elongated skulls and femurs suggesting individuals over 7 feet tall, extraordinary for the Bronze Age, though not quite the 30-cubit giants of legend. Mainstream archaeology dismisses these finds as outliers, but alternative researchers highlight a pattern. Wherever megaliths cluster in the Levant, so do accounts of giants. The ancient port city of Ugarit, for example, yielded tablets describing the Rephaim, another giant clan linked to the Anakim as master builders of Cyclopean tombs. The debate intensifies when examining the purpose behind these structures. Jericho's walls weren't just defensive. Their thickness, up to 12 feet in places, suggests they were designed to withstand forces beyond ordinary siege warfare. The Book of Deuteronomy describes the Anakim's cities as great and fortified up to heaven, a phrasing that echoes Greek descriptions of Cyclopean walls too lofty for humans to construct. Even the name Anakim may hold a clue, derived from the Hebrew word for neck. It could imply not just height but a lineage of necklaced or adorned builders, perhaps referencing their skill with stone. What's often lost in this discussion is the cultural memory encoded in these texts. The Bible's giants aren't one-dimensional monsters. They're portrayed as sophisticated rulers and craftsmen whose downfall symbolized the transfer of power to a new era. When Joshua's forces finally eradicated the Anakim, it wasn't just a military victory, it was the end of a forgotten epoch, its legacy preserved only in stone and story. Whether literal or symbolic, these narratives force us to confront a haunting possibility, that the Levant's megaliths are more than ruins. They're the last fingerprints of a world we're only beginning to decipher, where myth and masonry intertwine in ways we've yet to fully understand. Across the rolling hills of Britain, a network of invisible lines connects ancient stone circles, burial mounds, and sacred sites, paths known as ley lines that some believe pulse with hidden energy. But here's what's curious. These alignments often trace the same routes as centuries-old tales of giants striding across the land, their footsteps carving the earth into valleys or flattening mountains. The legendary giant Cormoran, said to have built St. Michael's Mount in Cornwall, allegedly hurled boulders along these lines, leaving markers that later cultures would reverence as holy sites. In Wales, the mythic giant Idris arranged the stones of Cadair Idris so precisely that they align with the summer solstice sunrise, as if his colossal hands plotted the heavens themselves. Could these stories be more than whimsy? Could they encode a lost understanding of the land's hidden geometry, passed down through generations as folklore? The overlap is uncanny. Take the St. Michael Line, a lay stretching from Cornwall to Norfolk, dotted with churches dedicated to the Archangel Michael, often built atop older megaliths. Local legends claim this path mirrors the route of a slumbering giant, his body forming the hills beneath. Similarly, Germany's Externstein, a towering sandstone formation aligned with solstice events, was said to be the work of a giant who stacked the stones during a cosmic battle. Even in Japan, the so-called Giant's Road of Oya Ishi features massive, geometric cuts in bedrock that align with star patterns, attributed to the mythological Datingu, towering winged beings with supernatural knowledge. What makes these connections especially compelling is the precision involved. Many ley lines align with celestial events, solstices, or planetary positions, knowledge supposedly beyond early cultures. Yet the legends insist giants possessed this wisdom. The Basque people tell of the Gentilak, enormous beings who erected dolmens in perfect astronomical alignment before vanishing with the coming of Christianity. In North America, the Choctaw speak of the Nahalo not just as warriors but as star readers who positioned mounds to mirror constellations. These aren't just isolated tales, they form a global pattern where giants, megaliths, and celestial math intertwine. Mainstream archaeology often dismisses ley lines as coincidence or modern pseudoscience, pointing out that straight lines between points are statistically likely over large distances. But the persistence of giant lore along these alignments raises deeper questions. Why would disparate cultures, from the Celtic fringes to the Andes, all describe towering beings as both architects and astronomers? One theory suggests these myths preserve the memory of an elite class, perhaps shaman kings or astronomer priests whose height and knowledge were exaggerated over time. Another possibility, the giants symbolize natural forces, their footsteps representing geological or energetic currents that ancient builders detected and marked. The most tantalizing idea that these stories hold fragments of a lost science. The Cherokee speak of the Octina, a giant serpent whose undulating path shaped ley lines as it traveled. Intriguingly, modern researchers like Paul Devereux have mapped dragon paths in China, electromagnetic anomalies that mirror both ley lines and ancient dragon myths. Whether through intuition, observation, or forgotten technology, it seems the builders of these sites recognized something in the land that we're only beginning to measure. The stones remain, the stories endure, and the lines between myth and geography blur in ways that challenge our understanding of the past. Perhaps the giants were never flesh and blood, but metaphors for the invisible forces that once guided humanity's hand. Forces we're still learning to see. Mainstream archaeology approaches the mystery of megaliths with a different lens, one that credits the brilliance of collective human effort rather than lost races or supernatural beings. The prevailing view among scholars is that ancient societies achieved these feats through meticulous planning, generations of trial and error, and the sheer force of organized labor. Take, for example, the construction of the Great Pyramid. While its precision seems impossible without advanced technology, experiments have shown that copper chisels, wooden sledges, and wet sand could have been used to cut and transport blocks. Teams of workers, possibly numbering in the tens of thousands, might have leveraged ramps and counterweights to move stones into place over decades. The key, archaeologists argue, wasn't magic or giants. It was time, patience, and a highly structured society with the resources to dedicate lifetimes to monumental projects. But what about the legends of giants woven into so many cultures? Skeptics point to a mix of misinterpretation and symbolism. Many giant skeletons reported in the 19th century were either hoaxes or misidentified animal bones, mastodon femurs mistaken for human legs, or Native American burial sites exaggerated by sensationalist newspapers. Even ancient texts describing giants might be metaphorical, representing powerful ruling classes or natural disasters. The biblical Nephilim, for instance, could symbolize the collapse of pre-Israelite city-states, their towering ruins inspiring tales of superhuman beings. Similarly, the Cyclopes of Greek myth may have arisen from the discovery of fossilized mammoth skulls, their single nasal cavity resembling a giant eye socket. The flaws in the giant theory become clearer when examining logistics. If giants existed, why haven't we found definitive skeletal remains? The few reports of oversized bones often lack verifiable documentation, and many lost specimens were likely casualties of poor record-keeping rather than conspiracy. Moreover, attributing megaliths to giants overlooks the incremental evidence of human progress. Sites like Göbekli Tepe show layers of construction, revealing how techniques evolved over centuries. The precision of Puma Punku's cuts, experimental archaeologists have replicated similar results using stone tools and abrasive sand, proving that patience and skill, not alien technology, could achieve such craftsmanship. Perhaps the most compelling counterargument is the diversity of megalithic cultures. From Japan's burial mounds to Ireland's passage tombs, each region developed unique methods suited to its environment. The idea of a single giant race building everything collapses under the weight of cultural specificity. The Incas' mortarless masonry, the Egyptians' ramp systems, and Europe's dolmens all reflect localized innovation, not a universal blueprint imposed by towering outsiders. This isn't to dismiss the allure of giants entirely. Myths serve a purpose. They encode awe, explain the inexplicable, and preserve the memory of achievements so grand they seem superhuman. But the truth may be even more remarkable. Ordinary people working together across generations accomplished the extraordinary. The stones stand not as proof of lost giants, but as monuments to human ingenuity, a testament to what we can achieve when we collaborate, endure, and reach beyond the limits of what seems possible. And in a way, that's the most inspiring mystery of all. The fossil record tells a story that often contradicts myth. No undisputed skeletal remains of giant humanoids have ever been unearthed. While scattered reports of oversized bones surface in old newspapers and colonial accounts, none withstand scientific scrutiny. The tallest confirmed ancient human, Roman Emperor Maximinus Thrax, stood around 8.5 feet tall, extraordinary but far from the 30-foot colossi of legend. Modern anthropology reveals that average heights fluctuated over millennia, with some prehistoric populations, like the Cro-Magnons of Europe, reaching around 6 feet, taller than many medieval Europeans but hardly giants. Even the infamous giant femur, displayed in a Turkish museum, measures just under 4 feet long, suggesting an individual of roughly 14 feet until you realize it's a composite of mastodon fossils, a classic case of mistaken identity. Gigantism, a medical condition caused by excess growth hormone, does offer a partial explanation for these myths. The biblical Goliath, described as 6 cubits and a span, roughly 9 feet 9 inches, may have been inspired by real individuals with pituitary disorders. Historical figures like Charles Byrne, the Irish giant of the 18th century who stood 7 feet 7 inches, became living legends, their stature distorted further by oral tradition. Similarly, acromegaly, a condition causing enlarged bones and features, could explain the monstrous depictions of giants in medieval art. But these conditions are rare, and sufferers often face severe health complications, making it unlikely they could form entire civilizations of master builders. Then there's the issue of physics. Biomechanics dictates that doubling a human's height increases their weight 8-fold, while their bone strength only quadruples, a scaling problem that would make true giants prone to fractures and mobility issues. Even the fictional King Kong would collapse under his own weight. This reality check undermines the idea of a race of 30-foot beings hauling 100-ton stones. Instead, archaeology points to sophisticated engineering. The Incas' pulley-less kitty corner method for moving stones, or the Egyptian use of wet sand to reduce friction, demonstrate how ingenuity trumped brute strength. Yet myths persist, and here's why: exaggeration serves a purpose. When the Maori of New Zealand described their ancestors as giants, they were honoring their forebears' prowess, not recording literal height. The Comanches' tales of the Satsika likely symbolized fearsome rival tribes, not actual cannibalistic titans. And when medieval chroniclers wrote of giant bones beneath castle foundations, they were blending classical lore with newfound fossils. Mammoth teeth became Cyclops skulls, dinosaur bones became dragon remains. The absence of giant bones doesn't diminish the wonder of megaliths. If anything, it amplifies their mystery. These structures weren't built by mythical beings, but by people who mastered their environment with tools, teamwork, and time achievements so monumental that later generations could only explain them through the language of giants. Perhaps that's the greatest testament to their builders' legacy, feats so extraordinary they transformed humans into legends. What if the secret to moving these massive stones wasn't strength but sound? One of the most intriguing and controversial theories suggests ancient builders might have harnessed acoustic levitation, using vibrations to make impossibly heavy blocks float into place. Tibetan monks still speak of a lost technique where chanting and specific drum frequencies could reduce the weight of objects, allowing them to be carried effortlessly. Similar accounts appear in the writings of Swedish explorer Henry Kjellson, who claimed Egyptian priests demonstrated how vibrations from clapping could shift large stone statues. Even the Spanish conquistadors documented Inca legends of stones walking when struck with sacred hammers. Could these stories hint at a forgotten understanding of resonance and energy? The science behind the idea isn't entirely far-fetched. Modern experiments have shown that sound waves can create acoustic standing waves, trapping small objects in midair. In 2016, Japanese researchers floated polystyrene beads using ultrasonic speakers, achieving levitation through precise frequencies. Scaling this up to megalithic proportions would require unimaginable energy, but proponents argue that ancient cultures might have stumbled upon resonant properties in certain stones or earth harmonics. Some point to the peculiar acoustics at sites like the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, where chambers amplify voices into eerie, bone-rattling tones at specific pitches. Could these spaces have been more than ceremonial, perhaps laboratories for sonic experimentation? Critics dismiss the notion as pseudoscience, highlighting the lack of physical evidence for levitation technology. They argue that even if sound could reduce friction temporarily, it wouldn't explain the precision cuts or celestial alignments of megaliths. But the theory persists, buoyed by oddities like the Coral Castle in Florida, where eccentric inventor Edward Leedskalnin single-handedly quarried and arranged over 1,000 tons of limestone. He cryptically claimed to understand the laws of weight and leverage used by pyramid builders, leaving behind only a crude flywheel and strange musical instruments. Was he a fraud, or did he tap into something deeper? Another twist comes from the work of physicist John Hutchison, who reported anomalous levitation effects during electromagnetic experiments in the 1970s, though his results were never replicated. The recurring theme in these accounts, sound, vibration, and unseen energy, suggests a tantalizing possibility. That ancient cultures might have manipulated forces modern science is only beginning to explore. Whether through resonant frequencies, geomagnetic anomalies, or something entirely unknown, the stone's stillness seems to mock our assumptions about the past. Perhaps the truth lies not in choosing between giants and sound waves, but in recognizing that our ancestors' ingenuity might have taken forms we've yet to comprehend. The absence of definitive proof doesn't erase the whispers in the ruins, the echoes of a time when the boundaries between physics and magic might have been far thinner than we dare to imagine. There's something primal about the idea of giants, a whisper in our collective imagination that refuses to fade. These legends persist across cultures and centuries, not just as campfire tales, but as psychological anchors, helping humanity grapple with the unknown. Think about it, when faced with ruins too immense to explain, or bones too large to comprehend, what's more comforting than the notion that they belong to beings as extraordinary as the structures they left behind? Giants serve as placeholders for our awe, embodying the mysteries we can't yet unravel. Consider how these myths mirror societal fears. In times of upheaval, natural disasters, invasions, or cultural collapse, giants often emerge as metaphors for overwhelming threats. The biblical Nephilim were seen as corrupting forces before the flood. Greek titans represented chaotic primal power subdued by order. Even the Paiutes Ka, red-haired giants of Lovelock Cave, were branded as cannibals, a warning against the other. These stories externalize our deepest anxieties, transforming abstract dread into tangible foes we can, at least in legend, conquer. But giants aren't just villains, they're also symbols of lost golden ages. Indigenous traditions like those of the Inca describe the Viracochas as godlike teachers who bestowed knowledge before vanishing. This nostalgia for a wiser, mightier past taps into a universal longing, the sense that earlier civilizations possessed secrets we've forgotten. When we stare at Baalbek's megaliths or the precision of Puma Punku, it's easier to imagine superhuman builders than to accept that ordinary people achieved the extraordinary. Giants become avatars of admiration, bridging the gap between our limitations and the wonders we inherit. Then there's the dopamine hit of the unexplained. Humans are pattern seekers, wired to fill gaps in our understanding. Before geology explained fossils, giant bones were the remains of heroes or demons. Before engineering decoded megalithic transport, legends spoke of stones moved by magic or muscle. Giants transform the frustrating voids in history into thrilling possibilities. What if the myths are true? This tantalizing uncertainty fuels everything from Victorian hoaxes to modern conspiracy theories, proving that the allure of gigantism isn't just about the past, but about the eternal human love for a good mystery. Perhaps most compelling is how these tales reveal our relationship with scale. Standing before a towering monolith, we feel small, not just physically but temporally. Giants embody the humility we feel in the shadow of antiquity, the awareness that we're latecomers to a story older than memory. They remind us that history isn't a tidy line but a layered puzzle, where truth and myth intertwine like roots beneath an ancient oak. And that's the real magic of these legends, not whether they're factual, but why we keep needing them to make sense of a world that still, stubbornly, refuses to surrender all its secrets. From Marvel's Eternals showcasing massive, god-like celestials shaping human history to the titanic battles in Attack on Titan, modern pop culture keeps the myth of ancient giants alive and thriving. These stories tap into our collective fascination with beings who tower over humanity, both literally and metaphorically reinforcing the age-old question, could giants have once walked the earth? Blockbusters like Warcraft and Jack the Giant Slayer don't just entertain, they subtly revive the idea of lost civilizations built by colossal hands, blending fantasy with echoes of real-world megalithic mysteries. Even sci-fi franchises like Prometheus flirt with the concept of engineers, an advanced race of towering beings who seeded life on Earth, mirroring ancient astronaut theories that borrow heavily from giant lore. Books and video games amplify this narrative. In American Gods, Neil Gaiman reimagines the Norse giant Bergilmir as a fading deity in a modern world, while games like God of War portrayed giants as the original architects of mythical realms, their ruins littered with clues to forgotten technologies. Conspiracy theories thrive on these tropes too. Documentaries and YouTube deep dives posit that suppressed archaeological finds, like the infamous giant skeletons allegedly hidden by the Smithsonian, prove a cover-up of our true history. The allure is undeniable. Giants symbolize a hidden past, one where the impossible becomes tantalizingly plausible. What's striking is how these modern retellings often circle back to real-world sites. The Lord of the Rings towering statues of Argonath evoke the monolithic colossi of ancient Egypt or Easter Island, while Game of Thrones' wall mirrors myths of giants building Cyclopean fortifications. Even children's media like the BFG or Gulliver's Travels keep the archetype alive, ensuring new generations grow up wondering about the line between myth and history. The pattern is clear. Giants aren't just monsters, they're metaphors for humanity's smallness in the face of time, and our hunger to believe that the past was grander, stranger, and more epic than we've been told. Yet pop culture's giants also reflect our anxieties. From Clash of the Titans to Pacific Rim, they embody threats that demand collective heroism to overcome, much like ancient legends of giants as chaotic forces subdued by gods or men. In this way, the myth evolves but never dies. Whether as builders, destroyers, or lost ancestors, giants remain a cultural shorthand for the mysteries we've yet to solve, and the secrets that might still lie buried, waiting for the next storyteller to dig them up. Deep in the arid expanse of Nevada's Humboldt Sink lies Lovelock Cave, a dusty, unassuming cavern that ignited one of the most persistent giant legends in North America. In 1911, miners searching for bat guano stumbled upon a trove of bizarre artifacts, duck decoys woven from reeds, stone tools, and hundreds of mummified remains. But what set the world ablaze were the reports of skeletons measuring 7 to 8 feet tall, some with strange, reddish hair still clinging to their skulls. Local Paiute tribes had long spoken of the CT-Ka, a race of cannibalistic red-haired giants who once waged war against their ancestors. According to legend, the Paiute finally trapped these marauders in Lovelock Cave, piling brush at the entrance and burning them alive. The miners' discovery seemed to confirm these chilling tales until the facts began to unravel. Newspapers of the era sensationalized the finds with headlines proclaiming "Giants unearthed in Nevada." Yet when archaeologists examined the site, they found no evidence of unusually large skeletons. The red hair turned out to be dyed with ochre, a common funerary practice among ancient cultures. The so-called giant femurs were likely misidentified as human, possibly from extinct megafauna like mammoths or ground sloths. Even the Paiute oral tradition, when scrutinized, reveals layers of ambiguity. While the CT-Ka legend is genuine, elders describe them as tall, not necessarily gigantic, and scholars suggest the stories may symbolize rival tribes or spiritual threats rather than literal giants. The cave's actual occupants were the northern Paiute's ancestors, a fishing culture that used the space for storage and rituals. What's fascinating isn't just the debunking, it's why the myth endures. The Lovelock story taps into a recurring pattern. When colonial settlers encountered massive earthworks or unusual bones, they often attributed them to a mythical other, rather than the indigenous peoples who actually built them. In the 19th century, theories of a lost white race of mound builders flourished to explain sites like Cahokia, dismissing Native American achievements. Lovelock's red-haired giants became a twisted variation of this trope, blending Paiute lore with Eurocentric fantasies. Even today, the cave attracts conspiracy theorists who claim the Smithsonian hid the giant bones, despite meticulous records showing the skeletons averaged normal height. But there's a deeper truth buried here. The Paiute CT-Ka stories, stripped of colonial exaggeration, likely preserve memories of conflict with a distinct group, perhaps the Fremont people, whose mummified remains in Utah do show genetic traits for lighter hair. Or maybe the tales encode environmental trauma, like droughts that forced desperate violence. The real lesson of Lovelock Cave isn't about giants. It's about how legends evolve when cultures collide, and how easily facts can twist into folklore when we're desperate to explain the inexplicable. The cave's shadows still whisper, but what they're telling us is far more human than any monster myth. So where does this leave us in the debate over giants and megaliths? The evidence is a tapestry of tantalizing clues and frustrating gaps. On one side, we have the sheer physicality of these ancient sites, stones weighing hundreds of tons, cut and placed with impossible precision, scattered across continents where cultures with no known contact built in eerily similar styles. Layer on the global consistency of giant myths, from the Nephilim to the Gentilak, all describing towering beings as architects of the inexplicable. Even the logistical nightmares of quarrying, transporting, and assembling these megaliths push the limits of what we believe ancient humans could achieve. It's no wonder so many have wondered, could these stories be more than myth? But the counter-arguments are just as compelling. Modern archaeology has shown us the ingenuity of collective human effort, the way ramps, levers, and generations of trial and error could move mountains, literally. The absence of definitive giant bones, the medical realities of gigantism, and the way myths often crystallize around real but exaggerated threats like rival tribes or natural disasters, all suggest simpler explanations. And let's not forget the colonial bias woven into many giant narratives, where indigenous achievements were dismissed as the work of imaginary races. The truth, as always, likely lies somewhere in the middle. Perhaps the most fascinating possibility isn't that giants existed, but that their legends persist because they fill a void in our understanding. When faced with wonders like Göbekli Tepe or Baalbek, it's easier to imagine superhuman builders than to grapple with the staggering capabilities of our ancestors. These myths challenge us to reconsider what ancient societies knew, how they organized, and what knowledge might have been lost to time. They remind us that history isn't a closed book but a living puzzle, with pieces still waiting to be fitted together. So what do you think? Are giants pure folklore, or could they be distorted memories of something, or someone lost to the ages? The beauty of this mystery is that it invites us to keep questioning, to dig deeper into both science and story. And if you're hungry for more enigmas like this, don't stop here. From the underwater ruins of Yonaguni to the cosmic alignments of ancient temples, our past is brimming with riddles that defy easy answers. Hit that subscribe button so you won't miss our next dive into history's greatest unsolved puzzles, because the truth is out there, hidden in plain sight, just waiting for curious minds to